Hey, so today we are going to look at what happened after Pearl Harbor. And after Pearl Harbor, Japan decided to push forward with their plans to get as much land and as much power in the Pacific as they could. So, following Pearl Harbor, Japan moved fast to take new land while the United States recovered from the attack. What about this picture lets you know that this is the Japanese army? Yeah, you're right. Rising flag sun, right? Rising sun flag right here gives it away. All right. So Japan sent its army to take control of as much land as it could. They had a special focus, though, on land that used to be controlled by the Americans. So they took places like the Philippines, Guam, and Wake Island, and other islands in the Pacific to get them away from the Americans and under Japanese control. American forces suffered defeat after defeat, which embarrassed and disheartened the American public. In this picture, you see all the soldiers sitting on the ground. Those are American soldiers and their Filipino allies who got captured by the Japanese army when Japan took the Philippines. And Americans were getting news about them every day. They were hearing that Japan was taking more islands, taking more prisoners, that the prisoners weren't being fed, that they were being forced to march for miles and miles and miles with no water. And the more news about the losses and defeats the American public got, the worse they felt. So, what was making the American public feel so embarrassed and disheartened? If you were President Roosevelt, what would you do to get America its spirit back, to get the US back in the fight? All right, so here's what happened. There was a man named Colonel James Doolittle, and he had been a test pilot before the war. So he tested out new Army aircraft, new Army airplanes to see how well they could fly, to see what they were able to do. And he told President Roosevelt that he thought he could bomb Tokyo, bomb Japan's capital. Everyone looked at him and said, "You can't do that. There's no airplane that can fly far enough to get from Hawaii to Tokyo, and bombers are too heavy to fit on aircraft carriers. And on top of that, they need a longer runway to take off than you can get on an aircraft carrier." James Doolittle said, "I can make it happen." He told them to give him the smallest bomber that the US Army had that could still carry heavy bombs. So they got the medium bomber, the B-25 Mitchell. That's what you see in this picture here. And him and his pilots trained to take off in the shortest runway possible so that they would be able to take off from the deck of an aircraft carrier. And when the time came for the attack, Colonel Doolittle took the first plane off the aircraft carrier with the shortest runway. So if his plane made it up, no one else had any excuses not to get their plane in the air. And he did it. Him and his men successfully executed a surprise bombing raid on Tokyo. This got the US the win they needed. They did almost no damage to Tokyo, but it meant a lot to the American people to know that they could finally fight back and take the fight to Japan after all of the losses they had suffered. All right, guys. The last question is going to be, why was James Doolittle's raid important? All right, that's it for today. I'll talk to you tomorrow.